A pleasure to welcome Rute Honorio today to our little conversation, our night science conversations. I met Rute at a workshop at Rutgers a couple of weeks ago, and I was fascinated by what she told me about her project and how it started. Rute, please introduce yourself and then share with us, please, how your project started.
So I'm a PhD student and I started my project in Brazil. I came here to Rutgers to kind of continue the project that I started before. So that was my goal. I had a clear goal when I got here, just do this experiment. So then when I started doing these experiments for this last figure, I noticed that I was not able to reproduce the data. So I work with malaria. And I wanted to know if the activation of this pathway would be related to the process of egress of parasites from the red blood cell. And I tried and tried and tried, and I was not able to do the experiment. But I also had controls for my experiments, and the controls were drugs and compounds that I knew it worked to activate and to deactivate this pathway. And basically, what happened is that I gave up. I didn't have more ideas, or I was lost. I
You
was
were in that
totally lost.
crisis moment, that cloud that we talk about.
Yeah, so I was there, and I remember one lab meeting. I was ready to talk to my supervisor that I've tried everything, I've read everything. I was desperate. My supervisor, he was able to find some patterns from the control experiments, and they've seen this before in the lab, but they've never tried to study that because it was not part of the work that was done before. So the idea, he was like, "Oh, do you see this? To see that when you see this, when this happens first and you add your drug, you see this pattern, but in other cells they don't act the same. So why is that? Why is what is the difference between these responses and between the cells? Basically, my project started from analyzing and finding patterns in my control experiments, and my thesis is basically written based on that now. So it was from that.
Describe for us I mean, if you will, the sort of the emotional journey that you had.
And it was a lot of, I was feeling stuck. I was desperate. It was this feeling of I don't know how to get out of this situation. It was a bad feeling. It was not like a good situation. I was feeling very, very sad. It was like the frustration, a lot of things going on at the same time.
You attended the workshop, and one of the things we talk about is how maybe the tools of night science can help when you're in that stuck space, right? When you're feeling those feelings that you just described. Did you learn things in the workshop that in the next time you get stuck, you think you can apply to get unstuck?
So in my case, I didn't know about the night science. Like when I was stuck in there, I didn't know about the concept. So I was basically trying to find ways of finding the solution, and it was like this loop of never able to progress. For me, the idea of trying to see the experiments or the results in a different perspective, it would be a nice way to really see like these differences that my supervisor saw in the workshop. We talked about that, about communication and seeing a different perspective and explain that to someone that is not in the field. So it was very interesting and trying to find like patterns and trying to find different ways of explaining that. But it was interesting that I learned about like how to do that before knowing about like the night science. And when I was in the workshop, it's like, oh, I did that. And I was remembering like every time that I went through that path of like trying to explain what I was seeing, but I was a bit lost. At some point, I remember like someone asked me, "What is your PhD about?" I'm like, I actually don't know. Like, I don't know where this is going to. It was like a good way to see like the night science in my project.
Yeah, I mean, scientists discover these thinking tools sometimes by themselves or from colleagues in a haphazard way, for sure. So you were kind of already doing these things. You were inhabiting the data. You were, maybe importing ideas from other areas. That's super cool. So Rute, are you now in the closing phases of your graduate work?
So I really like the idea of presenting and preparing presentations. So in the future, like for myself, I want to get involved more on science communications. So that's something that I learned from my PhD journey that I really liked this path of trying to explain things because I had to find ways to make the things a bit more simple and like to simplify things and concepts and trying to make that make sense in my head as well, like first in the first place and then explain that. So using these metaphors was useful for me to first understand and then I was like, oh, I can just say that in a presentation.
Yeah, you can unlock all kinds of mental powers that you otherwise you wouldn't be able to access.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your work, and thank you for sharing this moment of stuckness and telling us how you got through it. And of course, I wish Brazil all the best in the World Cup
Oh,
coming up.
yeah.
It'll be exciting to see how that goes. But thank you, Rute.